Hi, I'm Pasan, an iOS instructor here at Treehouse, and welcome to the course on Swift functions. Before we start with this course, there is some material you need to be familiar with. You should have completed the Swift Basics, as well as the Swift Collections and Control Flow courses, because we're going to be building upon knowledge that we learned in those courses. I'm going to assume you are comfortable with concepts like variables, constants, operators, collections, and control flow. Until now, all the code we've written in our previous courses was executed line by line from top to bottom in our playground. What if we don't want to do that? Sometimes we may want a certain block of code to be executed only when we need it. Now, you might be thinking this is what control flow statements are for, right? Well, control flow statements are good for executing code based on logical conditions. But what we're looking for is a self-contained block of code that performs a very specific task. This is exactly what a function is: a sequence of instructions that perform a very specific task packaged up as a unit. Apple describes it more informally as self-contained chunks of code or blocks of code that perform a specific task. Let's look at an analogy. Let's say we're modeling a typical morning of mine as code. I wake up, do a bunch of stuff, and then make some coffee. Making the coffee has a specific set of steps that we need to execute in order. We need to heat the water, grind the coffee, pour water through the ground coffee, and then keep the coffee warm. Something like that, right? Now, making coffee is a very specific task. As the day goes on and I get work done, I start to get tired and sleepy, so I need coffee again. I need to run through those same steps again. Writing the same lines of code more than once is something you don't just do when writing code. A fundamental principle of software engineering is DRY, or don't repeat yourself. Here, we're listing out the steps for making coffee more than once, which means that this can be a function, a sequence of instructions that perform a very specific task. When we encapsulate code in a function, which is a complicated way of saying when we wrap some code inside a function, we can call that function whenever we need that code. So rather than walking through the steps to make coffee every time, we can simply call the makeCoffee function. We'll look at what all this means exactly in a bit. I'm just trying to get a frame of reference for you. There are analogies to functions in real life as well. When you want to make coffee, most people don't run through the individual steps one by one. They get a coffee maker, and it performs a very specific set of tasks. You can think of the coffee maker as a function. A function goes by different names depending on who you talk to and what language you use. You may hear functions referred to as subroutines or procedures. But remember, all this means is that it is a self-contained block of code that performs a specific task. Let's take a quick break here. Now that we sort of conceptually understand what a function is, let's look at an example in code so that we can really understand what I mean.